Well, hello again. Hello and good evening to everyone joining from the United States, and Ohio gozaimasu, and good morning to our attendees from Japan. My name is Paul Pass, and I'm the Executive Director of the Japan America Society of Dallas-Fort Worth. Before we begin, I would also like to express Japan America Society's support for the people of Tohoku. We will certainly talk more about them throughout this event, but also there was an earthquake earlier this year, which actually was an aftershock of the disaster from 2011. And of course, we also wish everyone safety and health during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight's program is the third and final event in our 311 Resilience series, which is generously supported by the Consulate General of Japan in Houston. Additional support is provided by the Derek and Chizu White Charitable Fund. We also invite you to visit our YouTube channel to see another program in this series, an emotional story of a Miyagi firefighter who persevered through the loss of his wife and major damage to his hometown. Looking back 10 years ago, the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami have a special place in our hearts in North Texas because Dallas and Sendai have been international friendship cities since 1997. We responded to the need of our Japanese friends by raising over $185,000 for relief, and this was eventually donated for major repairs and improvements to the Mori no Sato nursing home in Sendai. Other partner projects included a goodwill banner, paper cranes, a book full of messages of hope, a courtesy visit to Sendai, a benefit concert, and a charity art auction. Our society was not the only organization in North Texas to show its kind hearts. The Derek and Chizu White Charitable Fund was instrumental in providing transportation services to thousands of displaced people and those living in temporary dwellings. I will share more information about this and Dallas area relief efforts through the chat box later. Now, I briefly wanted to go over some suggestions to maximize your experience if you are not familiar with Zoom already. Please note that your cameras and microphones are off, and if there are any technical issues, such as you are unable to hear the presenter, then please use the chat function. If you have questions during the event, please use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. This webinar also is being recorded, and we plan to upload to YouTube soon on our Japan America Society Dallas-Fort Worth channel. For the start of the program, I would now like to introduce a great friend to the Society to give remarks. I would like to welcome the Honorable Hideo Fukushima, Consul General of Japan in Houston. Consul General, please feel free to begin.
Well, thank you, Paul-san. Thank you for having me today in this special event to commemorate the 10th anniversary of a Great East Japan earthquake. Let me first offer my thoughts and prayers for the nearly 20,000 souls of those who perished and extend my heartfelt condolences to their families. I would also like to praise JASDFW for hosting this three-part resilience series focusing on the Tohoku region's reconstruction and recovery from the disaster. It is a tremendous honor for me to join today's special guests and the panelists. In my remarks today, I want to highlight two things. One of them is my deep appreciation for the friendship and support provided by the American people, as demonstrated through the disaster. Immediately after the earthquake, countless expressions of support and encouragement flooded in from concerned American citizens. Whereas in the Tohoku region, so many American friends, including the US military through Operation Tomodachi, worked tirelessly to search for the missing persons and provide support to victims. All of this goes to show how genuine the friendship between the people of Japan and the United States is, and that our friend in need is truly a friend indeed. Japan will never forget this sincere friendship, substantiated by countless grassroots exchanges with the US. On that score, I'd like to reiterate my gratitude for organizations such as JASDFW that have always worked to promote such exchanges. The other point I want to focus on today has to do with current situation under the pandemic. After one full year since the global outbreak of the COVID-19, the US is now aspiring to the lofty slogan of Build Back Better. The main thrust of this slogan is not only to overcome threats and return to original conditions, but also to rebuild so that we can continue to thrive even in the face of potential future crises. The keywords here are resilience and sustainability. I believe that exactly this idea will bring a renewed global appreciation for the spirit of Tohoku, demonstrated through its decade-long reconstruction process. The reconstruction efforts that Tohoku has made so far in its society, economy, and culture are all truly remarkable and commendable. In the current pandemic situation, I think it is now possible for the whole world to once again appreciate such efforts underway in Tohoku and move forward with a sense of solidarity. I truly look forward to learning more about the various reconstruction efforts taking place in Tohoku during today's panel discussion. With that, let me once again thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Consul General Fukushima, and we really appreciate everything that you do for us in Houston. Your district, you could say, your jurisdiction also includes Dallas, and we're so honored and so privileged to have you as Consul General representing this part of the United States. Now I would like to share a special video message from the Honorable Kazuko Kori, Mayor of Sendai, Japan. And as mentioned before, Dallas and Sendai have been international friendship cities for almost a quarter century. Please enjoy the video.
Good evening. ご視聴いただいているテキサス・ダラスの皆様、こんばんは。仙台市長の郡和子です。仙台市とダラス市は国際友好都市として20年以上の歴史がございます。本日は両市の絆を語る上で欠かすことのできない10年前の東日本大震災についてお話ししたく存じます。2011年3月11日に発生した東日本大震災では、東北地方に位置する本市も甚大な被害を受け、多くの市民の方々が尊い命を落とし、住み慣れた家や町を失いました。特に津波に直接襲われた沿岸部は壊滅的な被害を受けました。こちらは沿岸部にございました特別養護老人ホーム森の里の被災直後の写真でございます。ご覧いただきますように、建物全体が津波により深刻な被害を受け、新たな場所での再建を模索することとなりました。施設の再建には多額の費用が見込まれるところでございましたが、本日のイベントを主催されているダラス・フォートワース日米協会の皆様が仙台を支援するための基金、仙台リリーフファンドを立ち上げて募金を呼びかけてくださいました。こうしてお集めいただいた寄付金は森の里の運営法人の皆様に寄付され、新施設の介護浴槽の購入に充てられたと伺っています。新施設は2015年6月にオープンし、今日に至るまで地域の高齢者福祉の拠点として大切に使わせていただいております。このように私ども仙台市民が震災という大変な困難から立ち上がってこられたのも、テキサス・ダラスの皆様をはじめ世界中の数多くの方々からいただいた温かなご支援の賜物と感じております。109万市民を代表し、改めて深く感謝を申し上げます。ありがとうございました。さて、その後も森の里とダラスの皆様との交流は続いており、例年春に開催しております仙台国際ハーフマラソン大会では、ダラス市の選手の方々と森の里の入居者の方々の温かな交流が育まれていると伺っております。残念ながら新型コロナウイルス感染症によってこうした交流は一時中断となっております。またつい先日も福島県沖を震源とする非常に大きな地震がございました。しかし私は東日本大震災という苦難の中で復興の道のりを切り開いた市民の力、そして世界中の皆様との絆の力こそがこのような困難を乗り越える原動力となると信じております。そうした意味で東日本大震災を経験し乗り越えてきた仙台市が世界にその経験を伝えていくことは私どもの使命だと思っております。 本誌のウェブサイトでも震災からの復興の歩み、そしてそこから学んだ教訓を英語でも掲載しておりますので、ぜひご覧いただければと思います。最後になりますが、本日のイベントが視聴者の皆様にとって実りのあるものとなることを記念いたしまして、私からのメッセージとさせていただきます。ありがとうございました。
Wonderful. Great. We really hope you enjoyed that video. We have a great relationship with Sendai, and we are planning to celebrate the 25th anniversary of that International Friendship City signing next year. Our last guest speaker, another very special person who we can have join us for this evening or this morning for you in Japan, is Admiral Patrick Walsh, who is retired from the U.S. Navy and is back home in his state. State of Texas. He is a member of the Japan America Society's Advisory Council and a past recipient of our Sun and Star Legacy Award. Among many distinguished assignments during his career, he was commander of the Pacific Fleet and also led Operation Tomodachi, which was the U.S. humanitarian and military response to the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. Admiral Walsh, please feel free to begin.
Paul, thank you. And I just would like to extend my heartfelt greetings to the Council General, to our colleagues in Japan, and to our fellow citizens here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. As I look back on the events of 10 years ago, in many respects, it's like it was just yesterday. These are very deep-seated sort of feelings that we have as we arrived in Japan. Because Japan is one of the most instrumented countries in the world, we know now exactly what happened and where. At 2:46 in the afternoon, Japan time, on the 11th of March, 2011, at a location at about 60 miles or so off the coast of Honshu, at a depth of 21,000 feet, the Eurasian plate, the Pacific plate had been pushing up against each other for centuries. And for reasons that we don't really understand, all of that energy was released at once with the earthquake. And it displaced 10 billion tons of water, moving at the speed of a jet, 500 miles an hour, with a wave that reached 133 feet, with enough force to shake and affect the tilt of the Earth's axis. It dropped the coastline of Honshu by more than a meter and resulted in the loss of 20,000 lives and 400,000 people displaced and homeless. And then we had the loss of primary, secondary, and tertiary power to Fukushima power plant. When we arrived on the scene, we felt behind. We felt like we couldn't get enough information as fast as we needed to in the affected area to work with people who were physically and emotionally distraught by the effect of the earthquake, tsunami, and radiation disaster, or the triple disaster as it's often referred to. But you know, it's in that hour of crisis, it's in that time of tragedy that we really learn about ourselves and our fellow man. If ever there's a time and place where we witnessed the wrath of nature meet the best of humanity, it was in Sendai, where the chaos of the sea confronted the orderly life of the city, where that giant wave churned much like an egg beater and reached inland for more than 10 kilometers and grabbed everything within its path and pulled it back out to sea. But that same powerful wave also summoned a very powerful force in the spirit of the people of Sendai. And it brought, I think, out the best of people in terms of those who ran to the disaster to help those who were affected, and those who summoned an equally powerful force in terms of their spirit in which they were going to commit themselves to rebuilding their lives for their families and for their community with patience and prudence and politeness. It was an extraordinary moment for those of us who were there on the ground. extraordinary in the sense of we needed solutions. We needed solutions that were the best that the world could offer. And for that brief moment in time, during a period of severe aftershocks, we had more people running to the disaster to help with the afflicted than people who were running away. I think if Tomodachi taught us anything, it taught us not just a military operation, it taught us the power of an idea of what was possible. What was possible when we looked at ourselves as brothers and sisters trying to deal with a tragedy that required to summon up every fiber of energy and strength that we could summon amongst ourselves. Tomodachi taught us that nations have interests, but people have friends, and those friendships are key. And what we did in Operation Tomodachi is we proved that we will take risks for our friends and for the Japanese people. For as long as there's the challenges that are ahead of us, and there's real work that needs to be done, whether it's as a result of the earthquake or other matters that affect peace and prosperity, then our work must continue, and it must continue together. For as long as we make commitments to each other and we resolve to stand with each other, then that spirit of Tomodachi will never wither and die. And I think that that our operation now has a chance to live on in ways in the form of the Tomodachi Initiative that carries the very spirit of what we were trying to do. And it makes us all very proud now of how that legacy of true friendship has been passed from one generation to the next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Admiral Walsh. And we truly are honored. I know I see some of the other speakers clapping and applauding. We are truly honored by everything that you, your team, everyone involved did for Operation Tomodachi. And it just was an amazing effort on behalf of the US government. And it really does show Tomodachi. And for those of you on the call today who are not familiar, Tomodachi means friends. So we definitely solidified that friendship 10 years ago. And we continue to do that today. So before we move along to the next part of our program, I just wanted to quickly share, so when we mention recovery in Tohoku, that can mean many things. So just keep in mind that today we will be focusing on a few items. So we'll be looking at grassroots relations, grassroots organizations, and how that supports recovery. We'll be looking at the power of youth leadership, also how we attempt to change perceptions of disaster-afflicted areas, namely Fukushima Prefecture. Also, we'll look at how government initiatives can bring about change in a small city. So we certainly welcome all of your questions. And if you do have those, please go into the Q&A function on your screen, should be at the bottom of your screen. Again, we might not be able to answer all of them, but we will try answer all of your questions. So again, we'll be focusing today. We're only going to be here for about an hour. And again, recovery has been happening for 10 years and it continues to do so far beyond just this past decade. Okay. I also just wanted to share something we were talking about with Admiral Walsh earlier is Operation Tomodachi was the largest bilateral military operation in the history of the US-Japan relationship. So that was just just an amazing thing to think about. I wanted to share a few key points. Admiral Walsh shared a lot of these already in terms of the time of the earthquake. One thing I can't remember if you mentioned, but the magnitude. So the magnitude was between 9.0 and 9.1. And so this registers as the fourth most powerful earthquake since modern records were kept. That is just amazing to think about. As mentioned, the tsunami wave was at one point as high as about 133 feet, which is about 40 meters, which is about 5 stories of a building. That's just, it's hard to imagine. The economic damage, there have been different estimates. One that I saw was about 17 trillion yen, which is about $170 billion. And the World Bank estimated that the number was even higher, closer to $235 billion, or about 23.5 trillion yen. Also, 20,000 people died or were missing. Entire communities were destroyed, and people still cannot go back today. Additionally, the US came to the aid. of Japan, not just through Operation Tomodachi, but also through donations. So US private donations totaled $750 million, which is one of the top 5 largest philanthropic giving campaigns in US history. It's just amazing to think about what has occurred because of this. So now I'd like to introduce some of our panelists, and we'll get into the big part of our program. So first of all, just in terms of alphabetical order, we have Kazunori, or Kaz Ishii, who is a director at the Kamaishi City Office, and that is where his job focuses on overcoming population decline and revitalizing the local economy. His experience also includes launch of a management company for sustainable tourism and creating an ecosystem for next generation career development. Hiroyuki Karahashi is president of Homari Sake Brewery, one of the leading sake breweries located in Fukushima Prefecture. Since joining the company in 2004, he has served in several leadership positions before being promoted to president in 2011, where he directs growth strategies to increase sake consumption domestically in the United States and around the world. Finally, we have Junko Suda, who is executive director of the US-Japan Council's office in Japan, working out of the Tokyo office, and she has worked in fundraising, communications, and human resources positions at the Public Resources Foundation, the Walt Disney Company, Cartier, Japan, Hilton International, ING Life Insurance, and GE. And I will share a link if you want to read any more about our speakers. That'll be in the chat box in just a few minutes. So first of all, for our speakers, hajimemashite yoroshiku onegaishimasu. So I've met some of them already in Japan, but it's great to see you again. So our first question is, let's go first maybe to Ishii-san. So let's just go in alphabetical order for this. Ishii-san, if you could please tell us, March 11th, 2011, where were you and what were you doing?
I was in Tokyo working as a business consultant, and it was a big shake, and all TV show was broadcasting the Tohoku and Fukushima nuclear power plants. It seemed our tragedy happens, I thought. I felt.
Thank you much. Thank you, Ishii-san. Karahashi-san, could you please answer the same question? Where were you on March 11th, 2011? What were you doing? Oh, and Karahashi-san, we just asked to unmute you. I think you're still muted. There we go.
I'm so sorry. So I was attending a meeting in Iwate Prefecture. So usually it takes about 4 hours by car from my hometown. The meeting was canceled and I had to go back to my home somehow. But the highway was not available and the road was very bumpy and traffic light went down. And I had to take a detour, like a long detour. It took about 14 hours to get my home. And I remember that one of my friends living oceanside of Fukushima gave me a phone call, and he was crying and telling me a huge tsunami hit a nuclear power plant and it was in danger. So he had to evacuate from his hometown. So I remember he say like everything is over. So I had nothing to say. These are my memory on that day.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And as Admiral Walsh mentioned, I believe the tsunami at some points was as fast as 500 miles per hour. So, I mean, that's basically an airplane of water coming towards you. It's hard to imagine. And so last, Junko-san, where were you on March 11th, 2011?
Sure. So I was just by coincidence in the same building as US-Japan Council. That time I was working for another company and I was on the 26th floor of the building. So the shake was really huge and the shake went on and on. And that was an insurance company and we had branch offices in Morioka and Sendai and Koriyama as well. So we were trying to confirm our staff are safe, but it was so hard to get in touch with them because the phone network was broken down. And the total city of Tokyo was in big panic because all the transportation was stopped and then big traffic jam and everything, and then electricity shut down. So that was a huge, huge chaos. And we were always discussing someday big earthquake may come, because Japan is an archipelago on the range of series of volcanoes. So it could happen anywhere, anytime, but I was shocked and I was so surprised and saddened that this big tragedy finally hit us. So that was my feeling on the day.
So thank you to all our speakers for sharing that very emotional day. Another key point that I think is important to remember, and maybe it's hard for us who have not experienced an earthquake to think about, is the earthquake lasted for 6 minutes. So the magnitude I mentioned before was 9.0 to 9.1, and that actually helps tell us how long the earthquake lasted. And if anyone has been part of a tragedy, you know, even 1 or 2 seconds can be a long time. So just imagine 6 minutes. That is amazing. So now I'd like to come back to Junko-san, and we're going to start talking about some of the specific projects for each of our speakers. We'll have some general questions as well. As a reminder, please feel free to share your own questions in Q&A. So now, Junko, I would like to, we talked about Operation Tomodachi. There's also the Tomodachi Initiative. So could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So following the Tomodachi operation, which is the humanitarian support for the disaster area, Tomodachi Initiative, the educational exchange program was set up by the public-private partnership between U.S. Embassy and U.S.-Japan Council, with the support of Japanese government, as well as support from the business sectors, as so many sponsors who believed in this initiative. So it's the purpose is to provide the hope and friendship and leadership for Tohoku young people. So it all started with Ambassador Roos with his team visited Tohoku to visit many places. And when he visited the city of Rikuzen Takata, Ambassador met with the Mayor Toba and asked, what can America can do for Tohoku? And the mayor answered that, please provide hope for young people. Please provide opportunities for young people to see America so that they learn more about the world. They can be a global talents, and they finally contribute to the revitalization of Tohoku. So that was the genesis of Tomodachi Initiative. And actually, we in this panel are all related to Tomodachi because Paul and Ishii-san and Karahashi-san are all from Tomodachi Initiative program, namely Tomodachi Mitsui Company Leadership Program. So we all share the same experience of Tomodachi. So I think we can talk about later, but first I'd like to show a video which we created to commemorate the 10th year since the earthquake. So please show the video.
My name is Shunsuke Hayasaka, and I am from Miyagi Prefecture, Japan. I would like to share with you today about the Tomodachi Initiative, which greatly impacted my life. March 11th, 2021. The date marks 10 years since the Great East Japan earthquake. The disaster that struck our beautiful towns and villages, our hometowns in Tohoku region of Japan. The Tomodachi Initiative was launched to support the recovery of the Great East Japan earthquake, a unique public-private partnership between the U.S.-Japan Council and the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, with strong support from the government of Japan. Thank you to the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo and the U.S. Consulate throughout Japan for your strong partnerships and for believing in us that we can make the world a better place. Thank you to the government of Japan for supporting us to be the bridge between two countries and to invest in us to become future leaders. None of the Tomodachi programs are possible without the generous support of Japanese and American companies and individuals who share the vision of Tomodachi and who believe in developing the next generation of leaders. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your generosity.
もともとそのリーダーシップっていうのは多くの人を動かすものだと考えていたんですけれども、いろんな人が自分の道を進んでいるのを見て、学生の自分にも何かできるんではないかと考えるようになりました。
I joined the Tomodachi program in 2017, and I have participated in various alumni programs ever since. Every time when I learn about diverse leadership skills, I brought it back to my home to do my role of making my community a better place. Sometimes we face challenges, but I overcame those through my friends I met at Tomodachi. They inspired and stood beside me, and we are able to grow together. Tomodachi Initiative has now truly become a movement. It's a movement founded in Tohoku, but it's now well beyond that. It's a movement that empowers and inspires young people to become leaders and advocates for the US-Japan relationship. And it's a movement dedicated to the belief that we, young people, can change the world. We, over 9,000 young people from Japan and the United States, are the Tomodachi generation.
We are resilient.
私たちは異文化に適応する力を持っています。
私たちはコミュニティのために行動するという強い信念を持っています。
私たち友達世代はお互いを刺激し合い、世界を牽引していきます。
We, the Tomodachi generation, are the future.
Thank you so much, Junko-san. I think that really gives us an idea of the Tomodachi Initiative and what it has all accomplished. And as Junko-san mentioned, myself and the other two panelists, we are part of the Tomodachi Mitsui and Company Leadership Program, which is one of the few that's designed for, I guess, a little older audience. Most of the programs are for, like you say, elementary, middle school, high school as well. And three of us are, I guess, we're still young, but we're just a little older for that program. So thank you so much also to the Mitsui and Company for sponsoring that initiative. So Junko-san, I'm going to move to another speaker just so we can hear from some other people. So I guess let's go next to Ishii-san. Maybe if you could tell us a little more about Kamaishi City. So it is in Iwate Prefecture, but tell us what are some important things to know about Kamaishi City and how it was affected by the earthquake and tsunami.
Okay, so let me share some photo.
Sure.
And this is common or sorry. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Okay. Kamaishi are a city of fish, iron, steel, and rugby, and has developed industrial or city of Kamaishi City Works. And in the 2011, a lot of other people have died and a huge damage in the city. But we hold Rugby World Cup 2019, but one game was canceled due to a typhoon. We want to play Canada and Namibia match when Corona is over. And the recovery and the reconstruction process have made steady progress. And now we have pursued our sustainable community development. And let me show one of our program for the next generation called Kamaishi Compass. This is our project. And we made a public-private partnership providing high school students to getting a dialogue with young professionals inside and outside of Kamaishi. And we have 2 high schools in Kamaishi, and more than about 50% of them get out of Kamaishi after their graduation. And because we have no university in this region. And we have monthly dialogue session in high school introducing the talented people and business of Kamaishi and thinking together about what high school students want to do in the future and supporting their voluntary works and regional activities. More than 800 professional and 4,000 high school students participated in our program for 5 years. And through Kamaishi Compass program, a lot of students get new perspectives and ideas for the future. And some of them started their own project for their hometown Kamaishi. And compared to 5 years ago, local employment rates among high school students has grown up 50% up. I think it's a kind of blade of change after the tsunami.
Thank you so much, Ishii-san. And I just put in the chat box, if anyone wants to learn some more about the Compass program, we'll talk to Ishii-san about some other programs in a moment. I encourage you for that website, please go to it, maybe save it in your browser window, but then keep with us, stay with us and listen to our program. You may have seen in Ishii-san's background as well, the rugby balls. And he mentioned that, so there was a Rugby World Cup last year. And one thing I want to talk about in a moment is the concept of gaman, because we've talked about the tsunami and earthquake, and then one of the rugby matches was canceled because of a typhoon. So people in Japan are used to dealing with these situations and being resilient. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But also Ishii-san mentioned the numbers of program participants for Compass. One thing he did not say, though, is there are only about 35,000 people in Kamaishi City. So those numbers are very impressive. You're looking at a high percentage of the population. So let's move on to Karahashi-san, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to all the speakers. So Karahashi-san, so maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your brewery. And now obviously, many people might be wondering why we have someone from a sake company on this panel, but Karahashi-san is very involved in the community as well. So maybe Karahashi-san, if you could tell us about your brewery and the role that it plays in Kitakata and Aizu and Fukushima Prefecture.
Okay. My brewery was founded by my great-grandfather in 1918. So it's around 100 years old, but it's still it's like a baby as a sake brewing company, because most of them are more than 200 years old, 300 years old.
Okay.
But my great-grandfather was a very successful businessman, and he made this brewery the largest sake brewing company in Fukushima Prefecture. Also, he was not only leading sake industry, but also leading Kitakata's economy. He was a chairman of Chamber of Commerce and Social Welfare Organization. And my father was also a chairman of Chamber of Commerce until last year. And the sake business contributed to local economy a lot, since most of ingredients are provided by locally. Many sake breweries are family business, and so it has been succeeded to generation. So as a result, sake breweries have played very important role in the community.
Thank you so much, Karahashi-san. And I had the privilege and pleasure to visit him in Japan just, I guess, roughly 2 years ago as part of the Tomodachi Mitsui program. And so I got to see everything kind of behind the scenes, see how the product was created, and it's just amazing. He has a wonderful facility there. And it is very important for that community of Kitakata in Fukushima Prefecture.
Yes.
So now I'd like to open another question for all the panelists. So I mentioned that there was a typhoon in Japan during the most recent Rugby World Cup, which unfortunately canceled one of the matches in Kamaishi City. So there's a concept of gaman, and for people who do not speak Japanese on our call here, there are many different translations, but there's one that is enduring the seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity. Patience is also one way to translate it as tolerance or living through adversity living through adversity, or even perseverance. So continuing to go along. So if we could start first with with Junko-san, what does gaman mean to you?
Thank you. So yes, I think gaman is the word is quite often used to describe Japanese characteristics. And I think one of the virtues or the beauties that we have in common. But to me, the word gaman has some negative connotation as well, just to endure something, serious, something really bad happens, but you endure. But I like the word gamanzuyoi better. Gamanzuyoi means the capacity or the capability to endure and overcome or come back or being resilient. So I think the key word of today's discussion is resilient and resiliency of the Tohoku. So I like to continue to cherish this word, gamanzuyoi.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Junko-san. Maybe if we could go back to Karahashi-san, then we'll come back to Ishii-san. So Karahashi-san, what does gaman mean to you, or even, I guess, the idea of resilience? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, gaman has many meanings. It depends on the situation when it is used. But if you talk about a situation like after the disaster, I believe it means like to care about other people rather than yourself, or sometimes maybe to control yourself when you are facing a kind of difficulties. That is what I think about gaman.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much, Karahashi-san. So these are all great. I guess also in English, there might be a term that we think about, and then there's so many different ways to not so much translate it, but there are different things that come to mind. One thing that I also want to share that maybe gets more to the idea of resilience is nana karobi ya oki, and I hope I pronounced that correctly for everyone who speaks Japanese. So sometimes that is translated as fall down 7 times and stand up 8. And I think that also shares this idea of the Japanese people and how they continue to persevere. So Ishii-san, finally to you, what does gaman mean to you?
I think it means like never give up. And the earthquake was said to be once in 1,000 years. And our reconstruction process took a long, long time. And there were many painful and sad things. But there were many people who did not give up and thought, discussed, acted for the future of the city. I moved to Kamaishi for support, but I got a lot of courage from Kamaishi people.
Thank you, Ishii-san. I can share, we have a very diverse panel. So all of us now, I guess, have, myself included as the moderator, we work a lot on the Tohoku region, whether it's a relationship with Sendai or living in Tohoku or working on grassroots programs. But we have representation here. People have grown up in Hiroshima or Aichi Prefecture. So we've made the choice to focus on Tohoku, which I think is important. Let's see. Let's come back to Junko-san. So just talking more about the U.S.-Japan Council and the Tomodachi Initiative. How do you work with some of the networks within Japan? How do you support some of those organizations, possibly even companies? And how do you support, again, that network within the country of Japan?
So as firstly described, Tomodachi Initiative is a public-private partnership. So our endeavor cannot be achieved without those partnership and collaboration with many stakeholders. And many people believe in the missions of Tomodachi, which is to give opportunities and give hopes and new leadership skills and new friendship through our programs. So with all the collaboration, Tomodachi Initiative can only be achieved. And again, within the context of recovery of Tohoku, all because the disaster was so huge and so impactful and such a big tragedy. And many people cannot just let things go, but people compelled and to do something for Tohoku revitalization, and many people's lives were changed. Not only for those are affected by the disaster, but those who made career changes or made up their minds to really devote their resources, their knowledge for the revitalization of Tohoku. I think that was another collaboration within the people's field. So like Ishii-san, so he made career change to really devote his passions to Kamaishi City's revitalization. And me as well, I changed my career from business sector to nonprofit, because I was influenced so much by those who changed their lifestyle and the career visions to revitalization of Tohoku. And they jump into the community and live with the people in there. So that was a great thing that we could see. Not just we endure those hardships, but we create something new. I think that's the power of collaboration and partnership.
Thank you, Ishii. Thank you, Junko-san. I can't remember if I heard it in the video earlier, but there are, I believe, close to 10,000 alumni of the Tomodachi generation. So those include all the programs of the last 10 years, of which 3 of us on this program are alumni. And so I guess there are 10,000, yet we also have the opportunity to influence others. So we have many people on this call today, and they are also learning about Tomodachi and learning about these programs. So that's wonderful. I would like to come back. Let's go to Ishii-san now. So Ishii-san, you talked about the Compass program. Maybe you talk also about the Open City vision, the Open City, I think it's an initiative that you have, and what that serves to accomplish in Kamaishi.
Compass program.
Sorry, I believe you also have the Open City vision as part of Kamaishi.
Okay.
If you could just explain that and kind of what that is within Kamaishi.
Yeah. The key word, I think the most important thing for the future in Kamaishi is civic pride. Civic pride for their own town. After the tsunami, a lot of volunteers and various people and companies have visited in Tohoku in the last 10 years. And the young professionals who were born in Kamaishi and working in Tokyo came back to their hometown after the tsunami. And some of volunteers have started their own project or businesses. The next generation has opportunity to connect with the world, sort of like our Tomodachi Initiative, and thinking about and acting for sustainability of their hometown with various people have grown up the civic pride. This experience makes the citizens aware of the challenges and the possibility of the city. And it's a great asset of our vision for these 10 years. So our urban city vision, our resilient city vision is our encouraging and promoting, developing, accepting diversity, and taking pride in our city. And it will connect this region to the next generation, I think.
Great, thank you, Ishii-san. And I did share some more information also in the website or the chat box, so that people can learn more about Open City, which I think is important in Kamaishi. We have an audience question about, we'll get into that in a moment, but it does relate to some of the things we're talking about now. So coming back to Karahashi-san, we talked a little bit about the youth and investing in the next generation. So if you could share maybe initiatives you have through your brewery or even things you do individually to support the youth in Kitakata in Fukushima Prefecture.
Yes, I was a member of Junior Chamber of International until 8 years ago. And what we did was to educate young people to be proud of their hometown and to have a consideration for others. So we did kind of many excursion programs and camping programs, and also we supported Yes, we are excursion programs and camping programs. And also we supported the children who can't afford to get enough food. Sometimes they're like a dinner or breakfast. So we make a dinner for those children and help their homework sometimes. And I feel like it is very important for children not only to be given enough food, but also to be cared. That's what we did actually in the Junior Chamber International activities.
Right. Thank you so much, Karahashi-san. One thing I know he's still very humble, but I believe Karahashi-san, you were able to share your sake with Prime Minister Abe and President Obama, correct? There was a meeting.
Yes, it was 2016,
oh.
I believe. It was a G7 summit in Japan. It was taking place in Fukushima summit. So our sake was given to 7 top leaders in the world, from Shinzo Abe, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Yes.
So I think that shows as well, Karahashi-san is a great community leader and business leader, and we're very privileged to have him as part of the panel today. I think we'll just do 2 more questions, and then we'll go into the. We're getting more audience questions. That's great. Maybe Karahashi-san, back to you, and then we'll ask a question to everyone, because we're talking about Fukushima Prefecture. What is the current perception of agriculture and beverages and food products in Fukushima Prefecture? Are people still avoiding them because of that they're worried about nuclear contamination? And
yes.
how can we change that possibly?
So on the survey 80 years ago, about 20% of Japanese people didn't want to purchase rice or like agricultural stuff from Fukushima. But these days it dropped to 9%. So it's getting better. But still we have like a kind of bias from the radiation things. Sometimes the price is much lower than other prefectures products that happen right now as well, but it's getting better. What we did was inspected all of ingredients or all of agricultural stuff. And then we announced this is the safest agricultural stuff, or this is the safest food, or this is the safest sake in the world, because no other stuff or no other products inspected like very carefully. So we announced that one very openly, and then we did many things. And we went to go around the overseas and then telling them the truth, what we did. That's all we can do actually.
Mm-hmm. And in a conversation I had with Karahashi-san a couple of weeks ago, one thing that we need also is time. We need people to, I don't want to say forget what happened in Fukushima Prefecture, but as generations are less connected perhaps to it, then they might be able to buy more Fukushima products. And what I was able to see when I was there as well is that there is a lot of testing, so that rice and other food products through Fukushima Prefecture, if they don't pass the test, they don't go into the groceries and other areas where you can access them. So again, let's just do one more question, then we're getting some really good questions from the audience. So, well, actually, I guess through the audience questions, we actually have the next thing I was going to ask. So first of all, how can we, it's still, for those of us on the call here who are unfamiliar with Japanese demographics, you have really the 3 large cities are Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. And those cities are very appealing to young people. They can go there for opportunities, for obviously new jobs. I guess they're kind of exciting for young people. So how can we encourage people to either stay in Tohoku, or to come to Tohoku? Let's go to let's go to Junko-san first, and we'll come. I know Ishii-san will have great thoughts because he came to Tohoku. So maybe Junko-san, how can we encourage people to come to Tohoku?
So come to Tohoku, or maybe stay Tohoku. Well, well, in the spirit of Tomodachi Initiative, we encourage young people to go outside and see the world and come back and then give back what you learned to your community. So rather than staying, I'd rather encourage them to go out at least once to larger cities or maybe overseas, so that they have larger, broader view and broader network and broader friendship and broader knowledge. And then with that mindset, they should come back and contribute and give back to their own community. So that way, I think, the connection between local to local is more enhanced. And that will be the direction I think we have to pursue.
So Ishii-san, I think you have some unique perspective as well, because you came from Aichi Prefecture and you moved to Tohoku. So if you could share kind of how we encourage young people to, also so our audience knows, the demographics of the Tohoku region are quite old. You have people who've been there for many generations and who are staying, but the young people are moving out. So how do we encourage young people to come to Tohoku?
I agree to Junko-san. We support high school students and next generation find what they want to do. And in the process, getting in touch with attractive people and companies in Kamaishi and in Tohoku, and have them grow up attachment and civic pride for their hometown. Even if they go out of the city once to go university or work in big company in Tokyo, we will raise the next generations who wants to return to Kamaishi, return to Tohoku in the future. And a lot of support is gathered at the Kamaishi Compass. So far, we have received donation of 28 million yen from companies in Kamaishi and Charing Gym in Tokyo. It is important to support the next generation who want to do something in fearless way, rather than importing the body of the adults.
And I think the COVID is supporting this kind of change. The COVID made us to have a different view of how we should work, how we lead our life and balance the work and life. And then we can technically work from remote. So people have more access to live in local city, but do some work in that community, as well as keeping connection with the other areas. So
Yeah, exactly.
That's really an interesting point. That as you know, we're communicating across thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers today from Japan, Dallas, all around the United States, and hopefully also the younger generation is more familiar with, you could say, remote work or this type of technology. We know this is in Japan. It's not quite the same as the United States, but hopefully people, they could have those opportunities in Kyoto, Osaka, Tokyo, etc., but they actually could be located in Tohoku. That's interesting to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we go into Karahashi-san, I just want to thank. We had a couple of people ask some questions. We'll have another one coming up, but Hiroki Takeuchi shared a couple of questions. He's with us in Dallas. He heads up the Sun and Star program on Japan and East Asia at Southern Methodist University. So we thank him for joining us. So Karahashi-san, and you're very much involved in Tohoku with encouraging the next generation. We already talked about this earlier, but how do we, and maybe you personally, how do you encourage young people to stay in the Tohoku region?
Yes, I think the bottom line is whether they like their hometown or not. So what we do is educate young people what's special about Kitakata, your hometown, or let them experience those special things. And to get to know about own community is the first step to come to like own community. So.
I see. Thank you, Karahashi-san. So I think we'll close up with just one question. I'll combine something that we had earlier too. So we have a question from Suzanne Basala, who is the president and CEO of the U.S. Japan Council, and she was involved. I'm sure she probably sees Admiral Walsh here. So she was part of the U.S. Embassy team that had a just momentous task 10 years ago of trying to figure out how to support humanitarian operations, but even support U.S. citizens in Japan. So we thank her for joining us. So I'm going to ask one question and then I'll integrate her question. So one question is, what is the future of Tohoku and kind of what can we do to support that future? But then also she says she would like to hear what is needed to continue a strong recovery in Tohoku. So this could be, I'll open this up. This can be from a social aspect. It can be from building infrastructure. So let's actually first go to Ishii-san. What do you think we need to do for the future of Tohoku for it to be successful?
I think the keyword is civic pride, I mentioned before. And please speak Kamaishi Compass as a guest, please.
Great. Thank you, Ishii-san. And let's come back to Karahashi-san. For the future of Tohoku, what do you think needs to happen? How can we continue recovery?
At least for Fukushima, at least we have right to live safely and free from bias and free from radiation things which we cannot control. So to get back the right is our goal. But I feel our goal is kind of long way to go. So I may not be able to see the goal in my life, but keep approaching to the goal will be my goal.
Great. That's a good point. That there are many different communities throughout Tohoku. There are those that we still cannot go back to because of radiation, and we might not be able to go back to for generations, really. And there are other communities which have really risen to the challenge, and they look very similar to they did 10 years ago. So Junko-san, just to kind of recap everything, what do you think is important for the future of Tohoku? How can we continue recovery? How can Tohoku be successful?
Well, first of all, I think we have to acknowledge the recovery that we and they have made so far. So the devastation was such a huge thing. I think the coastal line that were affected by the tsunami, I think that size, the scale is compared to the older coastal line of the state of Texas facing the Gulf of Mexico. So that huge area was physically devastated and the people's mind also devastated. But now many lands are raised to a level that is not affected by tsunami, and new city is rebuilt, new residential area is rebuilt, and like the background of Ishii-san, the new sports stadium is rebuilt, and those recovery is amazing achievement for the last 10 years. And then we continue working on it, and as Karahashi-san said, it's a long shot, and some maybe never-ending story. But Tohoku is said to have all the social societal challenges like aging society, or the fewer birth rate and the lower birth rate, and the local economy is diminishing and so forth. But if we succeed in revitalizing Tohoku, that would be the solution for the entire Japan, or maybe for the entire globe. So Tohoku will be the first runner to tackle on these challenges, I believe.
That's a wonderful way to recap our entire program and thinking about what Tohoku can achieve. And it really has come quite far in the last 10 years. We have to remember that. But in many ways, 10 years is a short time frame. So we need to just continue to do all we can to support Tohoku. And we also can't forget. So it's very easy. We're sitting here 10 years, so we can only wonder what it'll look like at 20 years and therefore. So thank you so much to all of our speakers for joining. We now like to kind of share some information, but before we do that, again, I just want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you to our speakers for your expertise, but also sharing your ideas for how Japan can create a better future. We'd also like to express our gratitude to everyone who joined for this program. And you have an eagerness to learn and to understand more about Tohoku and about what occurred 10 years ago. So thank you so much. We'd now like to tell you about some upcoming events before we close the program. So if we could have those on the screen, please. Coming up, great. Okay. All right, so this week, it'll be Thursday evening in the US and Friday for those of you in Japan. We will have a talk about Japanese pop culture and how it has been influenced by COVID-19. Also how this may change the industry for the long term. This program is in partnership with Japan Society, and one important topic we will discuss is the recent success of the Demon Slayer film, which actually now I believe is the highest grossing film in the history of Japan. Next, our first event in April, which will be on the screen in a moment, will be with Shinji Koshikawa from Cross River Limited, and he will talk about how we can be more successful and efficient while working from home, which is something that I think we'll still be doing for quite some time. So hopefully we're turning the corner on COVID, at least in the United States, but we still have a lot to do, and we'll be working remotely for quite some time again. Just two days later after that is our next program. So again, the program with Shinji Koshikawa is April 13th in the US, April 14th in Japan. And then we will have an event in partnership with OIST Foundation. So that is the Okinawa Institute of, I believe, for Graduate Science and Technology. And we will be working with them on a program looking at aging in Japan and the United States, looking at the psychological and social impacts of aging in those two countries. And lastly, for our upcoming programs, we have a language class. So I believe this is the first time that we've offered language classes to the Japan America Society of Dallas-Fort Worth. And we have an adult class, which is sold out. We do have a waiting list, but it currently is sold out. So we have a kids class, which is designed for ages 9 through 13 and will run for 8 weeks starting in mid-April. So please visit JASDFW.org for more information and to register for all these programs. Again, that is www.jasdfw.org. So we kindly ask that you complete the post-event survey, which will pop up in your browser once the program ends. This concludes our event, and thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful rest of the evening for everyone in the United States, and a great rest of the day for those in Japan. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining the program. Thank you.